Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Samantha is not able to join us this week. She has some business to take care of for her and her husband's business, so they are off doing that. So we wish them well and hope that everything goes okay and that they get back safely. I'm here this morning with my good friends Catherine Clement, Lori Emmons, and Jason Roberts. And I'll let them go ahead and just say hi while I mute out.
Yeah, hey everybody. Good morning. Good morning and happy Saturday. Looking forward to the discussion. Hope everyone's had a great week. And yeah, we miss our friends that aren't here today. Hope everyone can join us as they can and throughout the week and catch the replays. So again, thanks for hosting, Dan. You're wonderful. Appreciate it. And thanks for being here, Catherine, and doing the readings.
Good morning to you all. I'm Lori Emmons in Denver.
Good morning, everybody. This is Catherine Clement. And so I'm the reader. I will just remind you what happened at the end of the last chapter. I'm trying to remember his name now. Hold on a minute. I'm looking for
Hugo.
Well, anyway, Hugo, thank you. So
You're
Hugo
welcome.
had told Nora, thank you. The only reason I'm still in this life is because of you. That's what Hugo said to Nora. And then Nora lunged forward and kissed him. So this next chapter is called If Something is Happening to Me, I Want to Be There. It was a very pleasant sensation, both the kiss and the knowledge she could be this forward. Being aware that everything that could possibly happen happened to her somewhere in some life kind of absolved her a little from decisions. That was just the reality of the universal wave function. Whatever was happening could, she reasoned, be put down to quantum physics. I don't share a room, he said. She stared at him fearlessly now, as if facing down a polar bear had given her a certain capacity for dominance she'd never been aware of. Well, Hugo, maybe you could break the habit. But the sex turned out to be a disappointment. A Camus quote came to her right in the middle of it. I may have not been sure about what really did interest me, but I was absolutely sure about what didn't. It probably wasn't the best sign of how their nocturnal encounter was going, that she was thinking of existential philosophy, or that this quote in particular was the one that appeared in her mind. But hadn't Camus also said, if something is going to happen to me, I want to be there? Hugo, she concluded, was a strange person. For a man who had been so intimate and deep in his conversation, he was very detached from the moment. Maybe if you lived as many lives as he had, the only person you really had any kind of intimate relationship with was yourself. She felt like she might not have been there at all. And in a few moments, she wasn't. God and other librarians. Who are you? You know my name. I am Mrs. Elm, Louise Isabel Elm. Are you God? She smiled. I am who I am. And who is that? The librarian. But you aren't a real person. You're just a mechanism. Well, aren't we all? Not like that. You are the product of some strange interaction between my mind and the multiverse, some simplification of the quantum wave function or whatever it is. Mrs. Elm looked perturbed by the suggestion. What is the matter? Nora thought of the polar bear as she stared down at the yellow-brown stone floor. I nearly died. And remember, if you die in a life, there's no way back here. That's not fair. The library has strict rules. Books are precious. You have to treat them carefully. But these are other lives, other variants of me, not me. Yes, but while you are experiencing them, it is you who has to pay the consequences. Well, I think that stinks, to be perfectly honest. The librarian's smile curled at its edges like a fallen leaf. Well, this is interesting. What is interesting? The fact that you have so thoroughly changed your attitude towards dying. What? You wanted to die, and now you don't. It dawned on Nora that Mrs. L might be close to having a point, although not quite the whole point. Well, I still think my actual life isn't worth living. In fact, this experience has just managed to confirm that. She shook her head. I don't think you think that. I do think that. That's why I said it. No, the book of regrets is getting lighter. There's a lot of white space in there now. It seems that you have spent all your life saying things that you aren't really thinking. This is one of your barriers. Barriers? Yes, you have a lot of them. They stop you from seeing the truth. About what? About yourself. And you really need to start trying to see the truth because this matters. I thought there were an infinite number of lives to choose from. You need to pick the life you'd be most happy inside, or soon there won't be a choice at all. I met someone who has been doing this for a long time, and he still hasn't found a life that he is satisfied with. Well, Hugo is a privilege you might not have. Hugo, how do you? Then she remembered Mrs. Elm knew a lot more than she should. You need to choose carefully, continued the librarian. One day the library may not be here, and you'll be gone forever. How many lives do I have? This isn't a magic lamp, and I am no genie. There's no set number. It could be one. It could be 100. But you only have an infinite number of lives to choose from, so long as the time in the Midnight Library stays, well, at midnight. Because while it stays at midnight, your life, the root life, is somewhere between life and death. If time moves here, that means something very, she searched for a delicate word, decisive has happened. Something that razes the Midnight Library to the ground and takes us with it. And so I would err on the side of caution. I would try to think very keenly about where you want to be. You've clearly made some progress, I can tell. You seem to realize that life could be worth living if only you found the right one to exist inside. But you don't want that gate to close before you get a chance to go through it. They both were silent for a very long time as Nora observed all the books around her, all the possibilities. Calmly and slowly she walked along the aisle, wondering what lay behind the covers of each book and wishing the green spines would offer some kind of clue. Now which book do you fancy? Came Mrs. Elm's words behind her. Nora remembered Hugo's words in the kitchen. Dream big. The librarian had a penetrating gaze. Who is Nora Seed? And what does she want? When Nora thought of her closest access to happiness, it was music. Yes, she still played the piano and keyboard sometimes, but she had given up creating. She had given up singing. She thought of those happy early pub gigs playing Beautiful Sky. She thought of her brother larking about on the stage with her and Ravi and Ella. So now she knew precisely which book to ask for. Fame. Should we stop or go on?
I think there's stuff to look at, but I don't know what you guys think. And these last two, I'll let you guys decide.
I'm okay either way, if you're all right with
you,
it.
Catherine.
Well, let me see how long fame is. That's not too bad. I can go ahead through fame and then we can talk probably. That'll give us plenty.
Okay.
All right, fame. She was sweating. That was the first observation. Her body was coursing with adrenaline and her clothes were clinging to her. There were people around her, a couple of whom had guitars. She could hear noise, vast, powerful human noise, a roar of life slowly finding rhythm and shape, becoming a chant. There was a woman in front of her toweling her face. Thanks, Nora said, smiling. The woman looked startled, as if she'd just been spoken to by a god. She recognized a man holding drumsticks. It was Robbie. His hair was dyed white blonde, and he was dressed in a sharp cut indigo suit with a bare chest where his shirt should have been. He looked an entirely different person to the one who had been looking at the music magazines and the newsagents in Bedford only yesterday, or the corporate looking guy in the blue shirt who had sat watching her do her catastrophic talk in the Intercontinental Hotel. Robbie, she said, you look amazing. What? He hadn't heard her over the noise, but now she had a different question. Where's Joe? She asked, almost as a shout. Ravi looked momentarily confused or scared, and Nora braced herself for some terrible truth, but none came. The usual, I reckon, schmoozing it up with the foreign press. Nora had no idea what was going on. He seemed to be still part of the band, but also not in the band enough to be performing on stage with them. And if he wasn't in the band, then whatever had caused him to leave the band hadn't caused him to disappear completely. From what Robbie said and the way he said it, Joe was still very much part of the team. Ella wasn't there, though. On bass was a large, muscly man with a shaved head and tattoos. She wanted to know more, but now was clearly not the time. Robbie swept his hand through the air, gesturing towards what Nora could see was a very large stage. She was overwhelmed. She didn't know what to feel. Encore time, said Robbie. Nora tried to think. It had been a long time since she had performed anything, and even then it was only in front of a crowd of about 12 uninterested people in a pub basement. Ravi leaned in. You okay, Nora? It seemed a bit brittle. The way he said her name seemed to contain the same kind of resentment she'd heard when she'd bumped into him yesterday in that very different life. Yes, she said, fully shouting now. Of course, it's just I have no idea what we should do for the encore. Ravi shrugged. Same as always. Yeah, right. Nora tried to think. She looked out at the stage. She saw a giant video screen with the words, The Labyrinths, flashing and rotating out to the roaring crowd. Wow, she thought. We're big, proper stadium level big. She saw a keyboard and the stool she had been sitting at. Her bandmates, whose names she didn't know, were about to walk back on stage. Where are we again? She asked, above the crowd noise. I've gone blank. The big shaven headed guy holding the bass told her, Sao Paulo. We're in Brazil? She looked at her. They looked at her as if she was mad. Where have you been the last 4 days? Beautiful sky, said Nora, realizing she could probably still remember most of the words. Let's do that. Again? Ravi laughed, his face shining with sweat. We did it 10 minutes ago. Okay, listen, said Nora, her voice now a shout over the crowd demanding an encore. I was thinking we do something different, mix it up. I wondered if we could do a different song to usual. We have to do Howl, said the other band member, a turquoise lead guitar strapped around her. We always do Howl. Nora had never heard of Howl in her life. Yeah, I know, she bluffed, but let's mix it up. Let's do something they aren't expecting. Let's surprise them. You're overthinking this, Nora, said Robbie. I have no other type of thinking available. Robbie shrugged. So what should we do? Nora struggled to think. She thought of Ash with his Simon and Garfunkel guitar songbook. Let's do Bridge Over Troubled Water. Robbie was incredulous. What? I think we should do that. It will surprise people. I love that song, said the female bandmate, and I know it. Everyone knows it, Imani, Ravi said dismissively. Exactly, Nora said, trying her hardest to sound like a rock star. Let's do it. All right, that's a good place to stop.
Oh, wow. Wow. put yourself in her shoes.
Any thoughts,
That moment,
anybody?
right? It just seems like it'd be so interesting dropping into another version of yourself and not knowing, especially being put on the spot like that.
Well, it seems like in every one of the lives she's dropped into, she's in, like, to me, what seems like a pivotal moment, but yet she doesn't know what's led up to that pivotable moment, and yet she's got to react and do something, and she's got to do it by the seat of her pants. And that brought to mind for us, even in our own daily lives, how many times are there those little moments where we come across them, and even though we're there and a part of that moment, there are times where we don't really know how to respond or how to react or what to say or what to do, and how frustrating that is even in our normal lives. But how would that feel in something like that where you just totally dropped in and with no real, it's bad enough going through that when you're, in the middle of your own life and you have those moments where you're just like, what, what do I do here and now? Because I think there are times we get so going into whatever we're doing that we're kind of on autopilot in some cases. And then we get that moment and it's like, okay,
It
what do I
seems to
do?
me, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Se-
No.
Seems to me that that's how Nora has been the entire book, always on the edge of a decision and or getting ready to kill yourself or whatever. Everything has always been on the edge of taking this a step one way or the other and feeling like it's the wrong one or not being sure. Go ahead.
The other thing I liked about the first chapter we read about, I gotta get back to that name again. Hang on. If something is happening to me, I want to be there. And I think that goes along with what I was just kind of saying. Sometimes I think we're so into our routine of our lives, we just do go on that autopilot, mode sometimes. And sometimes we forget we need to be there and in each moment as best as we can, so that way we can get the most value out of it and to be more, there, because I think we do get kind of detached a little bit as we go through our day-to-day lives. And it's, and for Nora, being in the library, trying to find that perfect life and getting into the next part where God and other librarians, where she started, the librarian now kind of has helped her realize that she herself has been part of the problem. It's not the lives out there. She just has not wanted to truly be, I think, honest with herself. And so therefore, when she first came into the library, she was just frantically trying to find any life that was not the life that she had just been in, and that she felt would maybe possibly be better and be the life that would give her everything she ever wanted, when I don't think she even really knew what she really wanted. And so now, at this point where it says God and other librarians, where she's finally realizing that she has to really start thinking, because as the librarian said it, once that second hand, whatever, moves off or moves to the next minute after midnight to 12:01, she will probably cease to exist unless she decides to fully accept a life and live that life out.
Possibly. Or perhaps they meant that she's like being worked on right now by the paramedics, and they might resuscitate her, and if so, then she gets pulled back into her regular life. If not, then decisive in the other way, where she actually passes away, is the way I kind of looked at it. But yeah, and it was saying in regards to what you're talking about, and the Mrs. Elm stating that her regrets were less. I'm assuming because she had experienced some other lives and now didn't regret some of the decisions she made um, in her original existence.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in that original life, she had all these regrets about if she should have been a glaciologist, if she should have been a rock singer, if she should have been this, that, or now she's had a taste of all that and decided it wasn't any good either. That book of regrets is getting wider and wider, as Mrs. Elm put it. I think that's true about life in general. As I've gotten older, there's things that I thought I wanted to do or be or whatever when I was younger that, maybe I'll think back, oh, should I have done that? And I'm like, no, I shouldn't have done that. Uh, I don't have a lot of regrets about stuff like that at all. Um, I don't have a lot of regrets, period, I guess, but I try not to compare so much, and I think that leaves me with less regrets. I think comparing yourself to other people or other whatever it is that you're doing, always comparing yourself makes you have doubts and regrets and makes you feel less than, and or maybe it makes you feel more than, who knows. When I compare myself to things or people, it usually makes me feel less than, but uh it's interesting. Thank you for reminding us, Jason, that she's experiencing all of these lives that we've been reading about while the paramedics are working on her original body. This is seconds, minutes. They don't work on you very long, maybe 15 minutes at the most. After that, they're like, your brain has been robbed of too much oxygen, unless you're hypothermic. So yeah, all this stuff is happening in instantaneously or even simultaneously.
Mm. Yeah, I'm wondering a little bit still about the scene with Hugo and how he went into so much about the quantum aspect of it. And so, was that actually another um, person, spirit, um, jumper, slider, or whatever that she was interacting with, that they just happened to have come cross paths in the Midnight Library? Is that what that was, or was that a part of her mind, or a part of a different? But it seemed like completely, just much more lucid than these others. And it seemed like it was a character that had been introduced from out of nowhere almost. So um, maybe I'm looking too much into it, but it seemed to be a defining scene, and um, then also seemed to have a profound effect on her, and even to the point of causing a little bit sort of I don't know, a response from Mrs. Elm. So I just wonder what.
I was gonna say, I think you bring up a good point on that, though. Hugo is so abstract in the sense of her life and how he was introduced, and him basically based on what he was saying that he's been in and out of quite a few, and he's been there a while, and he even said in this life that, in the one that he's in with Nora, he's been there the longest, and it's 5 days, which makes you wonder what's going on in his life, where maybe he's comatose or something, and maybe that's part of his stuff. But I also think that because of the nature of Mrs. Elm, the librarian, I'm wondering if she has a little more in the background of what is presented to Nora, maybe within some of these lives, and maybe this is her using Hugo as a way of helping to, when Nora comes back to her, of using it as a way, okay, now this is where you're at, but you have an infinite number of lives, but yet within that, your physical life has a certain limit. And so now, and maybe that's part of what was being utilized by Mrs. to help her get to this point, to maybe be a little more thoughtful of the life that she wants to. And I'm going to put it this way. I think maybe if she picks a life that she thinks is the life that is worth living, and she decides she wants to live, that when the minute hand moves off from 12 to 12:01, maybe that's where the decision is that, oh, I'm going to live, and I'm going to live, and I'm going to live in and work towards that life, where she doesn't make a decision or can't or won't, or her barriers, all the things that where she says something which is contrary to what she's really feeling. Maybe that's when she'll really truly physically die. And I'm wondering if, because in that last chapter, Fame, that right now looks to be, and we've only had that little bit, that little bit that looks promising, but she's changing it up a little bit, because now she's wanting to do something totally different than what that person might have done for the normal encore. And so maybe, in this, maybe as we continue on, maybe this is where she'll start accepting the value that she wants to live, maybe.
I totally get the idea about everything being mundane, do routines, do this and that. And it's mundane, like Groundhog Day or whatever, and I really am enjoying the idea of life being about books and all the endless possibilities. And totally struggling with the idea of choosing what do I want to do, and having all of the extenuating circumstances that may or may not allow you to do something that you think of, that you, how you decide what you're going to do or be. And I totally agree, Catherine. When you compare yourself, I always feel lesser than, you know, it's a very difficult thing. I mean, it shouldn't be, but it is for me. And then having all the extenuating circumstances that really put a damper on the choices that you feel that you have. You know, I don't know what was going on in Nora's life that made her choose or think that she wanted to kill herself, and then being there, having the paramedics trying to resuscitate you, and have it all happen in these couple seconds. It seems like. I'm just yammering on, so go ahead.
No, you were fine.
Yeah. You know, that brings up a good question. You wonder a little bit if Nora is taking that, what she said, to heart and making that connection as well. That's what that's what that time stopping at midnight means. It's kind of like recognizing you're in a dream, but still not making the most of it, and still allowing the dream to just take its own shape instead of interacting within it. Kind of. The idea also I thought was interesting how Michelle said there's infinite lives. However, then with that same idea about the time not moving, that there's limited time. Infinite lives, but limited time.
Oh, that the way you just said that, I think in some ways, I think that's how, or for me, now that I'm thinking about it, look at it, that's kind of how I feel my life is. I feel like there's so much I could do or could have done or am able to do and even still able to do, but within the realm of where I'm at, let's say physically, financially, there's that, the other thing. It's almost like I put these limitations on there. So therefore, and then I'm looking at where I am in my life, knowing that, okay, I am now this, so old. Can I really go after or chase after or and sometimes I think and I'm going to use a term we haven't used while we've been talking in this book, or I don't think we've said it in this way, limiting beliefs or our what we're, and sometimes, you know, maybe that's even a metaphor for even within our own daily lives of how we feel it. Because like every day I get up, I go out, you know, go work, I do my thing, and then I come home, I do my stuff here, and then I do, and it's like you said, Lori, that one day monotonous everyday thing, and we are used to it, and I'm going to say in some ways we're comfortable in it, but at the same time, I think anybody that way hates it. We want something and better and more and exciting, but yet then we let go back to, oh, well, I don't have the money to do this, or I don't have this, or I don't have that, or I don't have, and in our ways, you know, we're in our own library, so to speak, even then, to where, you know, and do we really look at all the different books that are available for our lives, or even chapters, even to change chapters within our lives?
I
Yeah.
think most people don't read. I'll just put it that way.
It's a book. It's a book.
Exactly.
It's a library.
And sadly, there'll be a day when, books really aren't known. I mean, even now, everything's digital. It gets harder to find books all the time, but there'll be a day when, they'll be really hard to find. People will have burned them probably. But
Hmm.
it's it's interesting how, like the incident with Hugo, we got left, they had this kiss, and then we thought something wonderful was going to happen, just like she thinks when she goes into these lives that something wonderful is going to happen. And then it turned out to be, you know, not so good. He was
Mormon
all
baby.
about him. He was about himself, and she was thinking about philosophy in the middle of it. So neither one of them were very engaged. But
That's funny. The sex is bad. She was out. She's gone. I'm out of here.
exactly.
Sex is bad. That's not gonna work.
Forget this life. If the sex isn't good, I'm out of here. That's funny. But I mean, that kind of stuff happens, that has happened to me in the past in my younger years. Uh, and sometimes we think something's going to be real wonderful. And then it's just like, or even just, I guess it's in my forefront because I have a granddaughter in my home now, but if you think back to just kissing, when maybe you thought a kiss was going to be the most amazing thing you ever experienced, and then it was just kind of blah or awkward or whatever, with whoever it was with, just wasn't the right connection. It's funny how we imagine things to be and how they are quite different. And unfortunately, a lot of suffering comes from that when we aren't willing to accept reality for what it is. And reality can always be changed with our next decision. I mean, you're right, we're always kind of in the library all the time. And every next decision has the opportunity to change our life in a way that we could never ever imagine. And I know this has happened for me personally, recently, physically, and it like you said, Dan, I'm having to rethink all the limitations I put on myself. I don't have to, I'm not a spoonie anymore. For people that don't know what spoonies are, they're people with serious chronic conditions who uh, have to measure your energy on a daily basis. In other words, in the morning, you think to yourself, well, I have 20 spoons of energy, so I can spend 2 spoons of energy to take a shower, and I can spend 2 spoons of energy to make a breakfast. And then by the time you get done with your 20 spoons, you're just done. There's nothing else left. So if you didn't save a spoon to brush your teeth that day, your teeth don't get brushed that day. I mean, that's just how it goes. But I don't have to count my energy anymore. Um, I don't have to limit myself. And I find myself doing it out of habit. And then I have to correct myself and say, no, that's no longer true for you, Catherine. You know, it's no longer true for you.
For another
Yeah.
label I can slap on myself. I'm a spoonie.
Yeah, you're a spoonie, honey. A lot of people don't know that they're spoonies, but they are. But most people go through their day and they might have to like conserve a little energy to do a special something, but they don't have to count every step of their life like other people do, or every some people can't take steps, so every expenditure of energy. And people that have like like chronic fatigue syndrome and stuff like that, people think, oh, what's the big deal? You get to lay around all the time. Well, people don't want to lay around all the time. You'd be surprised, like when you have limitations from your health and stuff, you do adjust to that. You have to, because it drives you crazy. So you adjust to not being able to do things, but that doesn't mean that you stop wanting to do those things. You do want to do those things. And it's very taxing, just all the things that you don't get to do, and so you can't dwell on that. You can only dwell on what you can do. But you kind of get it, or at least I did. I got into this false sense of um, that I'm okay with all of these limitations when really I wasn't. I mean, I had to be, but now I can see all the things that I wasn't doing, and it, oh my gosh, it brought such a sense of compassion for myself, which I wasn't expecting. But yesterday I just had, you know, not a whole lot of time, but a little bit of time that I was just like, wow, look what you've been through, really, look what you've been through. And somehow you've come through it, and come through it even better than you were before. And, that's all God. I mean, I don't take credit for any of that. But what I do take credit for is being open to that possibility. And that's what I would like everybody to be, is just open to possibilities in their life, and never to limit yourself completely. You can limit yourself for a little while, but don't put that as a, lifetime sentence that you'll never be able to do such and such again, because that closes that door of possibility.
I totally understand all that. I understand that people might compare themselves to me because I really find ways to be happy with my mundane existence. But internally, I'm having the time of my life, because convincing myself that I'm okay with this. I'm okay with riding my scooter around because I'm not polluting the air. I'm okay because I can get out and go and do something rather than sitting here in my wheelchair. And try to think of the limitless possibilities. And I don't know how to be well. I've forgotten.
I had forgotten too. I totally understand that.
I'm going to say something you two may not agree with me, but I think from my point of view, in some ways, you guys may have forgotten how to be well, but for people like me, hearing you and hearing what you guys say and how you react and respond and deal with life, I think you are probably in some ways more well than some of us who have not had to deal with the things that you guys have to deal, because you've had to learn to adapt, you've had to learn to find other ways, you've had to um, develop things that, in some ways we take for granted, because I can go out, I can take a walk, I can do this, I can do that, I can, go. So in some ways, you've had to develop other avenues to, I think, stay well within yourself. And I, think your outlook in a lot of ways is better than some of us who don't have those type of limiting things. And we get bogged down in all the things that, we get bogged down in, thinking that that our lives are so, not great or wonderful in this, but yet in actuality, I'm blessed. I'm, by the grace of God, I can still do a lot of things and, go out and do. And sometimes I forget to acknowledge it and accept it and be very grateful for those things and have that gratitude. So I think, I think you two, are even a good model for me to look at to, you know, change how I look at my life in some ways, because we all do. We all get in those moments where we just feel so kind of like Nora, um, we get to those very low points, and we all just feel like, what's the worth? What's why try? Why do? Why why anything? But hearing and being reminded, even from you guys' point of view, it reminds me that there's still a lot out there worth looking at, being grateful for, and being and not letting myself get stuck in the regrets or the you know my library, and remember that I still have those lives out there to go and look at and live and try and still continue living the life that I can, and know that each decision might be able to change it and alter it to go to the next, to a better level, or it might go to a lower level, but don't ever stop trying. And I think that's what I'm getting out of this book is, you can't just, it's not good just accepting where you are. You gotta be willing to look at yourself and say, okay, this may not be the greatest, but I can make the decision to go here and do that, or I can and I think a lot of people forget that sometimes.
Yeah, not taking things for granted is one thing. The other thing is everybody's always, what are you doing? It's all about doing and doing. And to me, it's more about being. I'm a human being, not a human doing.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Well, and just a quick reminder, you can, when you are doing those, oops, I moved my mic, sorry. When you are doing those mundane things, uh, come into, bring it to mindfulness. Like I have mundane chores that I have to do every day. And I just try, instead of just doing them mindlessly, I try to bring in some intention. If I'm cleaning something, then I'm cleaning away my limitations, or I'm cleaning away the angst in the world, or, try to attach some sort of intention to it, some prayer to it, so that that time, everybody talks about this precious time and how there's not enough of it. And yet, look how much time you waste in a day, either thinking negative thoughts or just, spacing out and not, thinking anything, which there's nothing wrong with not thinking anything. I try to keep my mind as like open and free as possible. But when I'm doing things that take my quote precious time, I feel like it's better served if I'm placing some intention at least attached to those actions, and not just having that as quote wasted mundane time.
I totally get that. As I'm doing those things, the chores or whatever, realizing that there's so much chaos and hectic actions by so many people out in the world that I am like the anchor holding things down, keeping things together and being calm. The anchor of light.
Yeah, I think that's something I know I've done, and I just said it in the chat that I forget sometimes when I come home and I'm just no, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that, I need to do this. Sometimes I don't get it all done, and but when I'm doing it, I forget that there's a purpose, an intentionality, and stuff behind it, and I just kind of do it with like, okay, I got to get this done, kind of that, you know, hate to say it, that teenager mentality. Oh, I don't really want to do this. It's a chore. I don't want to, it's not what I want to be doing. But yet, it's something that needs to be done because it's part of things I want, to keep my house looking nice, keep this doing, keep that, keep things. So I feel at peace and comfort when I come home. But yet, I forget that you know, maybe if I come in when I look at it, say, okay, the reason I'm doing this is because one, I don't want to have it build up, be a clutter. There's my intentionality of to keep it as taken care of as possible, so that way it doesn't get out of hand. And that way when I do come home, I don't have to worry about it as much either. Because I'm keeping up on it or doing the things and it just in the long run makes my life better and easier. So why not look at it that way with that intentionality and that peace that I will have that, okay, this is done, taken care of. It didn't take a lot of time, it's done, move on to the next thing, go take care of that. And then later on, I can have that downtime where I can sit, relax, just chill, refresh myself, you know, um, let myself uh, kind of regroup before maybe I go to bed. So that way, when I go to bed, I can get a good night's sleep and recharge and be ready for the next day. And sometimes I think I keep a lot of clutter up here, and I forget that I need to work on cleaning that out too and keeping that, you know, in order so that way it doesn't get in the way of me and, my energy, my, what I'm doing, what I need to do, my life. And I think we can all definitely, kind of in our own minds let our mind get cluttered too, and that doesn't help either.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting that um, we can we sort of get into these habits based on what the situation that we are living, the life path that we're on, and we develop these sort of habits that are that kind of it's kind of like human nature to do that, and it seems that it's a natural thing that um, is there to help us, the ability to kind of form these habits. but then they also can be sort of have this sort of gravitational aspect to it to pull us back to, if we were wanting to change things um, in any significant manner in our lives, that the habits can sort of end up being this gravitational pull back to the way that we were doing things. And at the same time, we have this sort of natural aversion to any change, any real change in our lives, and yet a lot of times I feel anyways, a lot of times we can, especially if you have regrets, you sort of, you want the change, and yet it's to be at some level against our nature to change. But definitely our ability to be present in the moment and in the time, in such a way that we're not only appreciating the moment and making the most of the moment, but then also being able to adjust uh, and make, even if only subtle, changes to sort of guide ourselves in a different direction, or a or a a different a path that maybe we see as being a little bit more favorable, breaking free from the habits that are keeping us from growing. Whereas sometimes life forces us to grow, but doing it intentionally and also letting go, both physically, habitually, and emotionally, from the path that we're on and the things that we're used to, in order to get to that next phase of our life. It it makes it, not to overcomplicate things, but it's just good to understand that there are those aspects that, perhaps if we realize that all of that is interacting at the same time, maybe we'll be a little bit less hard on ourselves, and maybe just be able to enjoy things and navigate the waters a little bit easier, or less stressfully.
But then there might be that polar bear
Oh.
if you don't have change.
Yeah, I was just going to say something about, in the fact, like in Nora, it seems like Nora got to that point where she did so want to change, but she got so comfortable and so accepting of, to keep, as the librarian put it, what was that? How did she say it? I think yeah, the barriers, how she would say things, here, and where she said, well, I still think my actual life isn't worth living. In fact, that this experience has just managed to confirm that. And then the librarian said, she shook her head, I don't think you think that. And Nora said, I do think that. That's why I said it. And then the librarian said, no, the book of regrets is getting lighter. There's a lot of white space in there now. It seems that you have spent all your life saying things that you aren't really thinking. This is one of your barriers. So maybe she's gotten so comfortable with saying that and doing it, and so therefore it gives her the out. And to me, that's her out of, oh, I don't have to do this, because I'll say this and this gives me that out. So then that way I can just blame it on that rather than taking the responsibility to herself that she really has the choice to make that change. But because in that moment she may not like or be afraid or unsure or whatever is happening in that moment, she'll say that and she'll throw that barrier up. And I wonder if I'm sure I have those type of barriers that I've got where I've done something like that, and I'm I think I'm becoming a little aware of them, but I don't know if I know them all or if I have recognized them all, and maybe that's something that this book is helping even me to see and understand, that um, we maybe we all have those inbred barriers that we just automatically go to that we're not even cognizant of fully yet. And that's how we cope.
Thought patterns or something.
Yeah. And maybe that's part of how we cope with stuff. And then, but then when we get later on and like, well, I really should have probably could have done that or should have taken that path, it might have led to something more. And so I think, in that sense, maybe that's something, you know, that's I'm getting out of this book. I don't know for any of you, but for me, it's like, oh, maybe there are some things that deep down I'm not realizing that are there that I just visually put up as like, okay, that's not fitting the what I might think of maybe what my exact or perfect life should be. But how do I know until I am willing to go and experience that to find out? Just because I may in this moment not think so, but I don't really know this side of that until I go through it and do it. So that might be, something that, and I think maybe she's starting to realize that now.
It's like we could if we it's like our comfort zone, and if realizing that your comfort zone is like me limiting myself. I'm more comfortable limiting myself to be, to not be able to do things, kind of a thing. And then you realize, well, how did that become my comfort zone? Right? How is that? You know, um, or just
Well,
having
almost like how did that become my comfort zone when deep down I don't want it to be my comfort zone. I really want to be able to do and then but then how do you undo it sometimes? Because it has become our second skin, so to speak, and it's so second nature, and we just slide right into it. It's mind boggling.
It's like suddenly finding yourself in a life and you're saying, how the hell did I get here? Just like Nora.
Great.
I love you guys. I got to jump off because I got to take my granddaughter to the fair. So,
Oh,
fantastic.
go have fun.
yeah, we're going
Have
to.
fun
Y'all have a great day.
You
have
too.
fun for me.
Okay, I will.
Right,
I'll have
terrific.
cotton candy for everyone.
Ooh, ooh, yum.
Sounds
Love you
great.
guys.
Love you
Love you.
too.
Y'all too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Be safe.
Gotten so late already.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful, and touching on quite a few things that we've spoken of before, but maybe in a different way, and really, always a pleasure. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So with that, we're going to wrap this up for this part of the book. We did not mention it, but I will briefly. I don't have the physical book, but it's called the. Hang on, I'll get it. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and we just continue on in the book with Nora and her many lives, and evaluating and just coming up with our own thoughts about that. You can find us on Facebook at mindsetmasterycollective.com. At Mindset Mastery Collective, you can find out all about how to jump on the Saturday Morning Mastermind to share your thoughts and views on this. We would love to have you join us. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, where we have replays of all the topics we have covered way back. I think like almost over the last 9 or 10 years of stuff we've done and grown and changed, and but we continue to grow. We love doing this, and you can also find us on our website at mindsetmasterycollective.com. Again, finding ways of how to join and jump on and be a part of this conversation. So we look forward to seeing you next week, and hopefully Samantha will be back with us next week, and she'll have gotten their big truck back and back to safely, and so they can use it for work. So with that, see you next week for the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye.